Hello there, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another RebelScum.com video. And here we are in part 2 of our Jabba's Sail Barge content. Now, keep in mind we're mostly going to be sticking with 3 3/4 scale for this type of content, while there are plenty of crossover characters in 6-inch scale. There's not a ton, not so much to warrant a whole nother video dedicated to talking about those characters and those figures. So we're mostly just going to be sticking to 3 3/4 scale with this one. We already talked about the sail barge itself, the huge HasLab. We got to show it off. Well, we got to show the box off and talk about how there's lots of really, really cool characters on that. Well, now we're actually going to be talking about the figures. In another video, we'll be covering the 2 skiffs that accompany the sail barge. So for now, guys, we're just going to be talking about the figures on the actual barge. And there are a lot of them. This isn't even close to all of them. And this is mostly just what I had available to show. So we're going to start right over here. We're going to start with one of my favorite section of characters, the Max Rebo Band. So the majority of the band did go to the sail barge. So if you're trying to fill out your sail barge, there's a couple of ways you can go about completing your Max Rebo Band. Of course, there's the vintage figures, which aren't that different from the Power of the Force 2 ones, and of course, they're going to be a little bit more expensive because, well, the original vintage. So, I recommend the Power of the Force 2 sets. There is a re-release of these figures with some slight updated paint in the 30th anniversary toy line with more of these characters grouped together. However, this is going to be a little bit more affordable, and you're still going to have to piece a few of these guys together. And not all of the figures in that collected set, or sets, because there were 2 packs, I believe. Not all the figures in that collected set is actually on the barge. So there are 12 band members in total. Most of them did go to the barge, especially Max Rebo. He's really the main one we do see. So here's 6 of the 12. So you got Max Rebo, Doda Bonawito. Doda's the Rhodian. Barquin Dan, and he is related to Figrin Dan of the modal nodes. Droopy McCool, Cy Snoodles, Joe Yowza. There's also the 2 big drummers. Big drummers. There's the 2 big bass drummers. So there's Akrev, who was released in Legacy Collection. He came with 1/2 of the big bass drum. Now, the big bass drum, of course, I don't think was on the barge. I don't recall seeing a big bass drum. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Akrev and Oompas Stay. Oompas Stay was released in 30th anniversary. I do not presently have him in front of me. He's one of the other members. That makes 8 of the 12 members. There's also, out of the Max Rebo Band, I think the only other member who has an action figure off the top of my head is going to be Rapper Toony. Now, Rapper Toony is a character who is noted to have stayed behind and not gone to the barge. As far as everybody else, they're not necessarily stated as having gone or having stayed behind in case you're trying to look it up online. Some of them you can kind of see in the background. It's quick, it's kind of dark lit, and there's a lot of who's who there. It's a very Where's Waldo kind of what you're looking for as far as creatures and characters on Jabba's barge. Now, there are some mercenaries on Jabba's barge, such as the notorious bounty hunter Bossk. Bossk can be seen on the barge. Of course, we see Boba Fett starting out on the barge, and there's lots of options for Bosks and Boba Fetts from over the years, all the way back from the 80s, all the way up to current. However, this is going to be the absolute best Bossk figure mold you're going to want. This figure of Bossk was first released in that Saga Collection 2006 version of what led to the Vintage Collection. So that pre-VC line, that second stage pre-VC line, because it started in Trilogy. And then had a few different figure re-releases. In fact, this figure actually was released in the Vintage Collection in one of those special action figure sets, but he hasn't gotten a single carded release yet. He, of course, was released on this card as well, and he might have had a number of other releases. It's hard to keep up with some of the various re-releases of the same figure. Now, there's also a pretty decent Power of the Force 2 version of Bossk. There's a pretty decent 2003 Saga version of Bossk. There's lots of more affordable Bossk options. This one's not super expensive, but this is the absolute best option in case that's what you're looking for. As far as Bobas, rather than start with the Power of the Force 2 Boba or the Power of the Jedi Boba, which is an Empire Strikes Back Boba, I recommend either starting with this one, which comes with that awesome flame figure stand effect and has some decent articulation. I recommend either this one, the 30th Saga one of the earlier VC ones, or the newest Vintage Collection release, which is the most screen accurate in 3/3 scale. He's not too expensive yet as far as value. He's still sitting around, I think, that $30-ish range in value. But this is the most detailed Return of the Jedi Boba Fett in 3/3 scale and has the most accurate colors to date and the best articulation. So I recommend this one. This one's VC 186. That's my favorite version of Boba for Return of the Jedi. It looks very good, but there are other more affordable options as well. Someone's got to be serving drinks to all of Jabba's guests, and there are a couple versions of R2-D2. The first version of, as I call him, Bar2-D2, and as some of my friends call him, Barge2-D2, for obvious reasons. The first drink-serving R2-D2 was released in this 2003 Saga card. Of course, you can put a number of R2-D2s on your barge, including pop-up lightsaber R2-D2s in case you want one on the top of your barge. I prefer the drink-serving R2 because it's such a unique R2-D2, and in a world where there's lots of R2-D2 figures and you're building different dioramas, I tend to steer towards the more unique, stand-out R2-D2s that specifically fit in those scenes, and I feel this one fits that mold very, very well. Now, there is a Vintage Collection version that does also offer the pop-up lightsaber gimmick as well, which is very nice. You get a little bit best of both worlds there with this. However, this one is more affordable. It's got pretty much all the articulation you would want in an R2-D2 figure, and looks very, very good. There are plenty of awesome guests to fill out your Jabba's Sail Barge with, including one of the most infamous, Yakety Yakface. And the reason I say that is because Yakface was a character that appeared in Jabba's Palace and on Jabba's Sail Barge that got a figure back in the day. He's one of the last 17 of the vintage figures, who was a figure that was kind of left behind at times. Kids didn't really want him so much back then, which led to his incredibly large value today. And when it came time for Power of the Force 2, after those figures were gone, he got lots and lots of figure releases in Power of the Force 2. Unfortunately, Power of the Force 2 does not have quite the value of its original vintage Power of the Force card back counterpart. However, this is still a pretty decent option. This is the most affordable option when it comes to finding a yak face for your Jabba's Sail Barge. However, there is a fully articulated yak face that was released in the Vintage Collection, which isn't very expensive yet. However, you're probably thinking, well, didn't the Sail Barge come with a yak face? Yes, it did. However, that yak face is worth on average $300 to $500 on its own, and a lot of collectors who purchased or backed Jabba's Sail Barge from HasLab probably abstain from opening it, which is something I would recommend. Most of the time I would say, hey, it's your collection, do whatever you want, but it is my official recommendation that maybe not open that yak face, as it does hold an incredibly large amount of value, and Hasbro did release a regular retail version of that figure, which is the same figure, just doesn't come on that original Power of the Force designed card and doesn't have the coin. So pretty cool still. I really like it, but again, there's a more affordable option out there. And I think they're both pretty good looking. I mean, this is definitely the better of the two, but I like this one too. It's a classic toy. Another Jabba's Sail Barge character guest you're going to want to get is going to be Reyes. Now, there is a more affordable option of Reyes as well. Reyes has one other figure that has been released, and that was on Power of the Force 2 card, much like Yakface was. However, if you want the absolute best version of Reyes, the fully articulated version of Reyes that was released in the Vintage Collection, it was only released carded in that Jabba's Palace playset in the Vintage Collection along with Han Solo and Carbonite. That's the only way to get it single carded. He was not released standard retail individually on this card. He was just released on card, packed in with Han in that other playset. You're also going to need a good Slave Leia. This is going to be the best option for Slave Leia. She also, aside from coming with the staff, she comes with Jabba's drink that he has when he's talking to Leia and pulling on the chain and stuff. Honorable mention, though, There is also Sandstorm Leia here from the deleted scene when they all get caught in a sandstorm after they leave the barge. I know it's not technically Barge Leia, even though this is the barge video. And we'll probably do a Return of the Jedi deleted scenes portion video at some point, because there are actually a lot of figures from the deleted scenes of Return of the Jedi from over the years. But I just figured it was worth mentioning because this is a really cool and valuable figure, only released on the Vintage Collection card. Now, there is a number of Slave Leias dating all the way back to Power of the Force 2, and throughout those years as well. There's even a version of Slave Leia for your Jabba's Palace diorama in Legacy Collection, where her waist is removable, so you can take off her regular legs that are articulated, and there's a swappable throne-seated Leia, and you just pop that on there, and you can put it on your Jabba's throne if you want. Band members, patrons, there's lots of other patrons that I don't even have in front of me that have figures, such as Tanis Spijek. Tanis Spijek was a unique character released in that 2003 Saga card. There's Jaquil, another unique barge alien that was only released on that 2003 Saga card. There's also Ephantmon, who is one of those larger barge aliens who is very, very unique and was only released on that Episode 2 toy card. There's Hermie Odal, which is another large, unique alien. There's a lot of cool, large, unique aliens on the barge, in case you haven't figured that out yet. That one was only released in 30th anniversary with a collectible coin, and he's Jabba's weaponsmith. There's Squidhead. Squidhead was released in Power of the Jedi only, also known as Tessic. And then there's a number of guards as well as skiff guards that stay on the barge, like the one-time release Legacy Collection Nikto Gunner. Nikto Gunner's real name is Nisad or Nisad. It's Nysad. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that in case I'm mispronouncing that. And if I am, please let me know with a phonetic in the comments or in the forums, please, as to how to properly pronounce that if you know the pronunciation. Nisad or Nisad was one of the Nikto Gunners on the barge, and there were a lot of Niktos on Jabba's Sail Barge. Let's see, who else do I have? Woof. Woof was one of the guys who was at the Jabba's Palace, but then later did go to the barge. This was one of the really, really cool kind of, not necessarily army builder packs, because these aren't generic characters. They are individually named characters. But what later came out to be really good filler and more affordable filler, because there are more expensive versions of all of these characters, but if you're on a budget and you're trying to fill out your barge, this is really, really great. It's around like 20 bucks in value most places, so I really, really like this one. Here you have Barada. Barada was on the skiff with Luke and Han. You've got Nikto. Nikto was on the barge. He's one of the barge gunners, and he was released... I set it aside. I set it aside over here out of my way, because it's also skiff characters in here. So we have Nikto. Nikto is actually right here as... He's the one right here in the middle. His name is Vizum. He's actually the first skiff gunner we see firing at Luke and Han on the skiffs when they try to escape. The rest of these two guys are on skiffs, so that's why I had it set aside. But there is a much more affordable version of Nikto right here. A lot of them were called Nikto because they're, as you know, Niktos. So there's that guy. Barada was on the skiff. I think I already mentioned that. Klaatu's right here. Klaatu was on the barge as well. So one barge guy, one skiff guy in this pack right here, even though it's called Jabba's Skiff Guards. Only one of them was on a skiff. The other two were on the barge. So I think that's kind of funny. Who else do I have? Jawas. Jawas can be seen on the barge. Now, there's lots and lots of different Jawas. There are some Jawas that are somewhat specific. There's the Jawas from the Purchase of the Droids that come in 30th Anniversary and Legacy Collection with the WED Treadwell droid and the LIN droid. Then there's Jawas that come with Sandcrawlers. There's the Vintage Collection Jawas. You're just going to need a few generic Jawas for your sail barge. course, there's other versions of Jabbas. Now, the sail barge does come with a Jabba, but in case you didn't buy the Khetanna sail barge, there's as early as Power of the Force 2. Well, actually, as early as Vintage, but the first modern one is right here. This is the Power of the Force 2 Jabba the Hutt. There are much better versions all the way up to Black Series 3 3/4 scale, and of course, that one was repacked into the Jabba Sail Barge and Vintage collection. And last but not least, of course, then there's also Luke Skywalker, who was on the skiff, but then later boarded the barge. My favorite version of Luke, however, isn't even this one. This is going to be the best one with the best face sculpt as far as face sculpt and articulation is concerned. However, my favorite Luke Skywalker to put on the sail barge is the 30th anniversary Jedi Luke that comes with the blast mark on the back of his palm. It's the only Luke Skywalker figure in 3 3/4 scale to actually have the blast mark that he gets from one of Jabba's guards on the back of his palm. Of course, then there's also gam guards that you're going to need for your barge. There's at least a few gam guards on the barge. And then there's a few other characters that you probably didn't see right here, like C-3PO. And that's because while there's lots of C-3PO figures, there's a VC C-3PO figure, the absolute best C-3PO, in my opinion, to put on the barge is also in that 30th anniversary toy line. It's the one where he's all covered in green slime, and his eye is popping out, and he comes with a Salacious Crumb figure. And that's another character that you need on your barge because, well, Salacious Crumb is on the barge, and he's Jabba's court jester, which is why he's on the barge. Plus, there's plenty of other Salacious Crumbs, but that's one of my favorite ones. And last but not least, Bumblebee Tuna. Bib Fortuna, as you guys know, is Jabba's main second-hand man, and he is, of course, on the barge as well, although we know later, of course, Bib Fortuna does survive and then later on takes over Jabba's job as Grand Daimyo. And Daimyo? I think I pronounced that right. Let me know if I pronounced that right. I might not have said that right, guys. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the forums. Now, there is a nice new version of Bib coming out in Vintage Collection. However, that figure is just now starting to make its way into stores. So we haven't quite gotten a hold of one to show off to you guys just yet. But stay tuned, because once we do, we will do a figure review of that for you. But as far back as the 80s, this is the first modern one from the 90s and the most affordable Bib Fortuna. Now, there's been a few others here in between. I would say the next best up until the new VC one comes out is going to be the Saga Collection 2006 one. It's got a little bit more articulation than this guy, a little bit better detail, and comes with some more accessories. So there you go. And there you have it, guys. There have been many, many characters. There are a lot of characters to collect for your Jabba Sail Barge, a lot of which I mentioned that weren't presently here, and a lot of versions of these. So you got plenty of options just in case one's more valuable than the other, in case you are on a budget, or in case you just want the absolute best one possible. Well, you got options for most of them. Some characters only have one figure each, but sometimes that's just how it is. Anyway, what do you guys think? Is it a lot? Is it a little overwhelming? I was a little overwhelmed getting this video prepared for you guys because there's just so many characters to cover, and like I said, so many figures for some of those characters just to find and just to talk about. What do you guys think? Stay tuned for the Skiff Guards video to go along with the Jabba Sail Barge stuff, because there are a lot of Skiff Guards as well. Not quite as many as, of course, Barge characters, and even still, not all of the Skiff Guards actually have figures. So stay tuned for the Skiffs. We'll be talking about the Skiffs very soon. Check out rebelscum.com daily for all kinds of news, updates, and information and videos. Check out rebelscumshop.com for all kinds of exclusive merch. Like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We'll see you guys later. We'll see you another time. May the Force be with all of you, you Rebel Scum.